Hi and welcome or welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. So today we are here with my slightly late August wrap up, but I really want to do this video because I managed to read 21 books in August, which is a lot more than I've been managing to read the rest of the year. I'm very glad that my reading has finally picked up. I must say this has been vastly helped by graphic novels. You will notice there is a lot of graphic novels and manga in this wrap up for August. However, I'm still going to appreciate it for what it is. The fact I read more in August is definitely a bit of a boost, and it is the boost that my reading challenge for the year really needed as well. But we do have a lot to get through in this video, so I am going to dive right in with the books I read in August. I still haven't gotten around to reviewing that many of these because obviously I read quite a lot of books in August, but we will give this a shot. But I will basically go through the books I read in order of when I read them, with some kind of mix-ups if I'm talking about a series, because I did read like a few in the same series as well. So yes. Also greatly helped by the fact I went on holiday with Courtney for a reading holiday, and if you do want to see that vlog I will link it down below, and it is also available on my channel. And I did read a lot of books while we were away, which was very, very helpful to this wrap up. So the first book I read was Some Mistakes Were Made by Kristen Dwyer. I will be going through these fairly quickly because there is 21 to get through. I will give you a rating, and that is 4.5 stars for this one, and a quick overview of the book, but I will be trying to get through these fairly quickly or this will be a very, very long video. But yes, this is a YA contemporary. I listened to the audiobook of it. It is following our main character called Ellis and her friendship with a guy called Easton, who she grew up with and now lives basically halfway across the country from, and it's basically about her kind of facing all these things that she's left behind when she moved away, why she did that. There is a massive focus on friendship, on relationships, on family, all of these troubles you kind of have growing up, but this also feels like quite older YA rather than a younger YA, which I really, really enjoyed. And I really liked the audiobook for this one. It's kind of exactly what I wanted and expected from this book, so I gave it 4.5 stars. I then picked up Burndown Rise Up by Vincent Torrado. This is a kind of dystopian set in New York City, set in the Bronx, love letter to the Bronx, weird kind of game that is set in like the underground subway in the Bronx. It is very, very strange. It is featuring these weird creatures. It is like a weird version, kind of reminded me of An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, which is a book that I absolutely love. But I must say this one didn't quite hit the spot for me. I just found that the game wasn't really what I wanted it to be, and I wasn't really clicking with it, and I wasn't really clicking with the writing style. Again, I did listen to this one on audiobook, and I definitely think that the concept is really there. I'm just not sure that it was executed 100%, so I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. This is then the start of my holiday with Courtney and a graphic novel kick in which I read Princess Ever After by Kay O'Neill, who is the author of the beautiful, gorgeous, very cute Tea Dragon Society books, which I love. This is a very cute, very queer graphic novel following a princess who's been reluctantly rescued, and it's just very, very short, very, very sweet. I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I then read Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi and Children of Virtue and Vengeance, obviously by the same author. This is a duology. No, there is going to be more in the series, however the second one isn't coming out until next year. The first one I gave 4 stars to. This one I am unfortunately only giving 2 stars to, mainly because I literally remember nothing that happened apart from very, very few scenes. I read most of the first one physically and then listened to this one on audiobook, but I did read some of the first one on audiobook, so I don't think the audiobook is my issue here. I know that there are a few people who have said that the second one just really didn't stick for them. But anyway, the first one follows Zaylee, who has this kind of magic. They are in a world where magic was kind of banished from the kingdom many, many years ago. I think it was about 20 years ago, but now everything has kind of changed and Zaylee is trying to bring magic back and strike against the monarchy. There is kind of a found family feel. There's some kind of romance which I didn't really like all of the time, which is why I actually gave the first book 3.5 stars, and then I did end up giving the second one only 2 stars just because it didn't really click at all for me and I just didn't really take a lot of the book in, to be completely honest. But I did really enjoy the first book. I felt like the concept was really good, the world building was really good, I did like a lot about it, but I didn't really get the romance or the characters all that often, and I just felt a bit distant from them, which definitely kind of continued into the second book as well. So yeah, a bit of a mixed one for me there with the start of the series, and I probably won't be continuing when the final book, the third book in the series, does come out next year. I then picked up The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. This is actually a reread for me. I read this back in 2017 just before it was released and absolutely loved it and gave it 5 stars, and I decided to give this a reread because one of my friends was reading this as well, so I decided to buddy read this alongside him, and I did enjoy this one a lot the second time, but definitely not as much as the first time I read it, just because I am a lot older now. The main character is quite young in this and does come across as quite young, so I did find it a lot harder to relate to her. But this one is a dystopian book set in space. It's kind of a thriller, it's kind of an adventure, it's very, very fast paced, it's told primarily in kind of like these emails, very short chapters. There is a lot to love about this book, and it's definitely probably my favourite Lauren James book. I've read all of her books and I do love all of her books as well. I really enjoy her writing and I do have a soft spot in my heart. This one was very, very good and we both enjoyed it reading this one. But yeah, I'm going to give this one 4 stars this time round. I then picked up If You Still Recognise Me by Cynthia So. Me and Courtney read this one together on holiday and we absolutely loved it. It was so, so good. I had very high expectations for this book, but honestly it lived up to it and maybe even surpassed them. I gave this one 4.5 stars in the end. It is a very, very sweet, queer, like contemporary coming of age YA romance story, and it is just very, very good. It's set in Oxford if I remember rightly. It's following Elsie, who has a crush on Ada, who is an online friend, and then her old friend Joan comes into her life, and it's kind of her having to deal with all of this stuff, this online friendship, this friendship that she's got back in real life all of a sudden. She's also dealing with some family issues. There's a lot of discussions of her sexuality in here, and there is, yeah, just a lot in this book, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really, really good, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I then reread Lore Olympus Volume 1 and read for the first time Lore Olympus Volume 2, which I absolutely adored. This is a graphic novel series that was published originally as a webtoon and is now being published as physical books and are being released as physical books, and I reread the first one. I did read it last year. It was like the last book I read of the year before I did continue on with the series to read Volume 2, which has not long come out, and I loved Volume 2 even more than I loved Volume 1. This is following Greek gods in kind of a modern world with kind of modern technology. It's very, very well put together. The colour palette in this is absolutely gorgeous and continues on throughout the books. This is beautiful. The characters have their own kind of colours, which I just find really, really good because it really helps me connect to them, helps me like know who I'm following. It does mainly follow Hades and Persephone, which honestly I am not mad about. I do really, really enjoy reading about them, and I think is why I enjoyed Volume 2 even more. So I gave the first one 4 stars and the second one 4.5 stars. I then picked up Under a Dancing Star by Laura Wood, and this was absolutely beautiful. I had no idea how much I was going to love this book. I read A Sky Painted Gold last year and really, really enjoyed it. That is a retelling of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Under a Dancing Star is a retelling of Much Ado About Nothing. That's the one, which is a Shakespeare play that I am not really familiar with because I'm not really familiar with Shakespeare plays. However, I absolutely love this book. It is a 1930s romance set in Italy and it's following Bea and Ben, and it's beautiful. I love the way Laura Wood writes romance. I am not one for historical fiction, but I absolutely love the setting. I love the time. I just think this was done so well. Me and Courtney read this together and we were both really absorbed in the story. We couldn't put this down. We read this basically in one sitting, in one evening, and I implore everyone to read this book, and I can't wait to read more from Laura Wood. She is an absolute genius and we both just absolutely love this. Perfect for a summer evening. and 5 out of 5 stars. And we then picked up The Henna Wars by Adiba Jaigerda. This was the last book that me and Courtney read together on a holiday, and we mainly read this one on audiobook, or read at least half of this on audiobook and half of this in a physical format. I read Honey and Issue's Guide to Fake Dating last year and really enjoyed it, so I was excited to read another book by this author, and this is basically following two girls at school who are in this competition against each other for basically to make their own businesses, and they both decide to go for henna and creating henna businesses. It's really interesting. There is a lot of discussions of kind of race and religion in this book, which are really interesting, but also about sexuality as well, as they kind of realise that they are attracted to one another. I really enjoyed this book. It wasn't perfect, and there was a few things in it that I did feel like maybe could have been handled slightly better, or maybe just needed a bit more space within the book. It maybe could have been a little bit longer to kind of have space for that. I'm not really sure, but I did give this one 4 out of 5 stars. There is a lot to love about this book and this author. And then coming off holiday reading, I did pick up Hooky, which is another graphic novel. This one is a super cute graphic novel that I did start reading at the very end of mine and Courtney's holiday, but it took me so much longer to get through this than I would expect it to. I just really didn't feel that much motivation to pick this book up. This was originally published as a webtoon as well, which I feel like worked so well for Lore Olympus, and that works really well as volumes. However, this one just kind of missed the mark a little bit. It felt very disjointed, and it felt kind of like you could tell that it was published as webtoons because maybe the chapters didn't fit that well together all the time. Felt like the colour scheme was changing quite a lot, and just kind of the tone of the way the story that was going. It was really cute, and I really liked the concept of it, and the art style I cannot fault. I absolutely adored it. It's so cute. There is a lot of text on the pages though, which is probably why it took me a lot longer to get through than I was expecting to. This one basically follows two 12-year-olds who I think are brother and sister, Danny and Dorian, and they miss the bus to magic school, and they basically end up going through this magical kingdom to try and make their way back and get into all kinds of mischief. It was very cute, but it did kind of miss the mark in some ways, and I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I then picked up Squire, yet another graphic novel, but I really enjoyed this one. It was so good. This one follows Aza, who wants to be in the kind of royal guard in her world, and she wants to become a knight, but she's kind of looked down upon as being a second-class citizen due to kind of where she's from and her all-new status, and she's kind of fighting this throughout this graphic novel. This is so beautifully done. Again, I really love the art style and just the colours in this. The colour palette is absolutely beautiful, but also I really liked the story as well, and there is not quite so many pieces of text on each page, and just kind of going from Hooky to this was a lot more coherent and a lot easier to kind of follow. I read this in basically one sitting, and I did really enjoy it, so I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I then went from one fantasy graphic novel into another, and I picked up Nimona by N.D. Stevenson, which I also really enjoyed. I feel like I've heard so many good things about this book. I was very excited to finally pick it up, and I read this one basically in one sitting as well, and I really enjoyed it. This is following a kind of unlikely bunch getting into mischief. It follows Nimona, who is a sidekick to a supervillain, and it's just kind of about all of these things that they get up to. The art style, again, very different, but I did really enjoy it. The only issue I did have with this is the text was sometimes quite hard to read because it's really small on the page, and it goes right into the spine sometimes, and it's just kind of hard to kind of read all of those tiny bits of text, but I did really enjoy it. I can see why everyone loves this book so much. I feel like it's very highly regarded. I think it's one of Alice Oseman's favourite books, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I then picked up the first 3 volumes of I Hear the Sunspot, which is a manga which is following 2 boys at a high school as they become friends, one of which has a bit of a hearing disability and the other is becoming his kind of note taker, and it's essentially a kind of manga heartstopper. I can see the comparisons. It's really cute. I just ended up really loving these two, loving following them, and also just really loving the representation as this one went on. It was just really very sweet, and I picked up the first 3 volumes and read them in basically under 24 hours. I gave the first one 4.5 stars, the second one, which I'm trying to think, is Theory of Happiness, 4 stars, and the third one, which is Limit 1, 5 stars. I really did enjoy that one, and just the representation of this one and the discussions in this one I really enjoyed, but all of them really good, and I'm looking forward to continuing with this series. I then picked up On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden, which is yet another graphic novel. It's a very chunky one, and I really liked this one. I've had this one on my shelf for a while. Courtney actually bought this one for me for Christmas last year, so thank you to Courtney. Finally got around to reading it and I really enjoyed it. This one's actually set in space and it's following a girl called Mia and this kind of crew as they are rebuilding these structures in space. This one is non-linear and it does kind of flip backwards and forwards, but it is quite clear when that happens, which I thought was really well done within the story. And honestly, the thing I love most about this book is I feel like every single page and double page spread is its own art print. It is absolutely stunning. The setting was just to die for, and I just feel like the drawings were so emotional and so well done, and I'm really excited to read more by Tillie Walden, because although I enjoyed this one, I feel like there is stories that she's written that I will actually relate to more and find even better. But this one, I just felt like I could stare at some of these panels forever. It was absolutely stunning, and I'm very glad I finally read a Tillie Walden book, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read in August was Charming as a Verb by Ben Phillip, and I read this one as an audiobook in the last couple of days of the month, and I actually really enjoyed this one. It's set in New York City. It's following a boy called Henry who is kind of coming to terms with who he is, who he wants to be, where he wants to go to college, those kind of things, and also just has a lot of pressure in his life. He's decided to set up this little side hustle business as a dog walker, which is going to bite him in the ass essentially, and because of that he becomes friends with Corinne Troy, who he never expected to be friends with. It was sometimes a little predictable, but honestly I really enjoyed this, and I felt like the kind of discussions that it had were really interesting and kept me on my toes. I did really enjoy it. I think there is a lot to love about this book, and it has a bit of a found family aspect as well. There is a lovely sidekick friend called Ming who I really loved as well, and I just think this book was really enjoyable for what it was, and I did really enjoy it. It is a little bit predictable. It is a little kind of contemporary YA predictable, if that makes sense, but I did really like it, and I'm gonna give this one 3.5 stars. And last but not least, although this is now in the wrong order but I forgot to include it earlier, I did also read There's a Ghost in This House by Oliver Jeffers, which is a picture book. It is absolutely adorable. Honestly, I just wanted to own this book. It's really stunning. I keep trying to show this off on videos, but it's really hard because it is a massive book. But essentially this is following a girl who feels like there's ghosts in her house but she can't see them, and it has these transparent pages. When you turn them, the ghosts appear in the frames, and it's just an absolutely beautiful piece of art. It's a beautiful thing and I love it, and I love that I have it, and I'm going to give this 5 stars. Oliver Jeffers is probably my favourite picture book author, and I'm just glad that I actually own one of his books now and have read it myself. It is absolutely beautiful. So that is all of the 21 books that I read in August. I am very proud of myself for the amount that I managed to read. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it's ended up being so long. I've tried to keep this as concise as I can, but I did read a lot in August, which I'm very happy about. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!